Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Murray Beaulieu. Murray is a former Army captain who served as a quartermaster officer for 5 years, stationed in West Germany at the height of the Cold War. As someone who grew up as an Army brat with a father who flew Hueys in Vietnam, Murray's life has been profoundly shaped by the military, instilling a passion for service and leadership. After transitioning out of the military, Murray embarked on a 35-year corporate career in operations finance, working at top-tier companies like Raytheon, Texas Instrument, and Analog Devices. However, his mission didn't stop there. In the last year, Murray has dedicated his expertise to helping small business owners level the playing field in financial literacy, specifically in building business credit. Murray's commitment to giving back, his strong values in faith and family, and his ability to network effectively have allowed him to build lasting relationships throughout his career. Whether adopting 11 dogs with his family or using his network to help others thrive, Murray is a testament to how we can use our experiences to serve others. Today, he's here to share with us the lessons he's learned from his time in the military, his successful corporate career, and his current work supporting businesses and veterans. Let's dive in and welcome a true strategic veteran, Mr. Murray Beaulieu. Murray, thanks for being here, brother.
That was pretty generous. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm generous, man. That's you. That's
oh my God.
That's all the information you gave me to properly introduce you to the audience. And
very well done. I appreciate being here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, brother. So
thanks for all you do.
Yeah, let's jump right in, man. So you grew up as an Army brat. So let's talk about how that your father's military career shaped your decision to serve.
So, we had to move a lot, and I lived all over the world. And, I think I've lived in 13 states. I was born in Puerto Rico. I lived in Germany for 10 years. So I lived all over. And one thing, when you're young, it's pretty easy to move around and meet new people. The older you get, it gets a little harder because people are more established. So one of the things I developed early on was an ability to meet people and network, right? When I was a little kid, and particularly for hanging on other Army kids. Everyone knows that people move all the time, right? So it's kind of acceptable. And, the good news, it became very easy to meet new people. The bad thing is I never really had a hometown. I really wanted to have a hometown. So, I always admired my dad. He had 2 assignments where he had to go on his own and left my mom back in the States on accompanied assignments, right? Vietnam and Korea.
The 2. And everybody knows those.
Yeah, everyone knows those. And it was, as a kid, you don't grasp the seriousness of all that, when you're a kid. You just expect him to be back,
Mm-hmm.
And, like most veterans that were in combat, they don't like to talk about it. I mean, he got shot down 4 times.
So he was a helicopter pilot.
He was a Huey pilot, yeah. And he had an unusual mission. Their primary mission was maintenance to fix Hueys, but they would take him out and run missions to test them to see if they were fixed. So it was like, it was a combination of both, right? And he did have a couple of incredible stories, which we won't get into here, but unbelievable guy. He won a couple distinguished flying crosses. So anyway, I felt that was always, an amazing profession. I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was, as I got older. I kind of was good with numbers. And my dad always said, hey, if you don't know what you want to do, you can always join the Army.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that always, there's a few things your dad always says that your dad says that always sticks in your mind. I can think of about 20 quotes, and that was like one of the big ones. The other thing is, I really liked Germany as a kid. I really liked being in Europe. We did travel a lot as a family, and it was an opportunity to, at the time I was in the 70s and 80s, most of the force of, most of the Army was in West Germany at the time because there's a huge perceived threat of the Soviet Union. Basically, all of Eastern Europe was considered Russia,
Right.
So anyway, so the chances of getting over there were very high because no one wanted to go there, but I wanted to go there because I'd been there as a kid. I knew, I loved Germany. So that's kind of a weird reason why I joined the Army. But I went ROTC in college.
Smart.
And here's a little story that is pretty funny. So I didn't know where I wanted to go to college either, right? And back in those days, no one did college visits. There was no internet. You really had no, there wasn't all this research of schools and all that. So most people went to the state school that they were, So I was getting ready to I was in St. Louis, Missouri in high school. I was getting ready to go to the University of Missouri for lack of any imagination.
Yeah.
And my family used to watch Notre Dame football games on Saturday. And my dad says, you should apply to Notre Dame.
Time out.
Okay.
Did you go to Notre Dame?
Yeah.
You have no idea how big a fan of that school I am.
Really?
Yeah, man. I don't know. You can't see it, but I have a "Play Like a Champion Today" flag.
Oh, you're kidding me!
Dude,
Oh.
I got a 3D stadium on the wall. I grew up in Southern Indiana. I'm a huge
Really?
Notre Dame fan. I don't miss games ever.
I knew you were smart and good looking, but now I really know that.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I was a freshman at the game Rudy played in the movie Rudy, right? At the end of the movie, where he actually gets in the game.
Yeah.
I was a freshman, which is very super trivial and really means nothing, but it seems to resonate with a lot of people because it's a great movie. I've only seen it about 98 times.
Yeah, I mean, I watch it at least once a year, of course.
Once a year. It's required, right?
Yeah.
When I was a student there, it was required. This is the ancient days. Everybody had to watch the movie Newt Rockne All American, which is from like the 40s with Ronald Reagan played the Gipper, win one for the Gipper.
It's a tough one to watch.
We all had to watch that. It was like ancient and, get everybody fired up. Now they make everybody watch Rudy, because it's a little more current. But yeah, I mean, most of the movie the overall gist of it is accurate, but they took a lot of liberties to.
Well, it's Hollywood; they embellish, right?
Yeah. But I will say that we were chanting Rudy at the game, but no one knew what the hell was going on. The guy didn't announce it like he did in the movie, like they're chanting Rudy because of. Right. No one knew that. No one knew the backstory. We only knew the backstory the next day when we read about it in the paper, But anyway, we did chant Rudy, and they did carry him off, which I think was the first time in a long time that they ever carried him.
I love that you did the ROTC program at Notre Dame because as a Notre Dame fan, I'm very aware that the Navy is responsible for that still being a college.
Man. You're on top of your game. Yes.
Yeah. And so a lot of people don't know it was World War II time frame, right? Notre Dame, they were failing as a school, and the Navy stood up the ROTC program there and saved Notre Dame, turned it into the program that it is today. So I didn't know they had an Army ROTC program there. I didn't have grades to get in there. That was like my dream school when I was in high school, living in Southern Indiana. That's all that's on TV is Notre Dame football, especially when you're poor and all you have is the local channels. But I've been to that campus. I went up, I took one of my only college campus visit. I knew I didn't have a chance of getting in, but I was like, I'm going to miss school to go up here and see this campus and cool. All of that. And I think it's amazing, man. So you end up in the Army, you get to West Germany like you wanted to be.
Let me just wrap that up. I got to tighten that story up. So I didn't have grades to get in either. So I applied, and I applied kind of late. And so I didn't find out I was getting into Notre Dame until August, and school starts at the end of August, right? I was planning on going to Missouri, and they called me and they said, "Okay, you can come in." And so I walked the room I walked in. It was a most freshmen have it's called a triple. There's three, and the other two guys that were there were expecting somebody else who went to Harvard at the last minute. And so they're like, "Who the hell are you?" Anyway, those guys were my best friends in life, and both of them were in my wedding. Those people are all the best friends. But here's the cool thing: I didn't get accepted to Notre Dame, but the guy in charge of Army ROTC saw my application in the inbox, and he put me in the accepted comments. He did something that got me in. I found out later he used to work for my dad in the Army, and he
Well, that's
recognized
cool.
my name is not too common in the Army. It's very common in France, but not too common in the Army. And so he connected the dots, and he got me in. And he never told me. I never got to thank the guy. That was I got real lucky, man. So anyway, I had to tell you that part.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's and
Otherwise, it wouldn't have
how
got in.
so just to embellish myself, how was the experience at Notre Dame? Is it everything that I imagined it would be?
I mean, yeah, the best friends I've had in life I've met a lot of people and I met a lot of great people, but the strongest bonds I've had is with everybody there. The school is, and I was lucky to be there when there was a guy named Father Hesburgh, which most people on this broadcast aren't going to know, but you might know,
I do.
who is the most amazing human being I've ever had a conversation with. Probably second only to I have never met Jesus, but I would say he's right there, next in line. Not because he's a priest, because of everything else,
Because he's a decent human being, right?
an unbelievable human being. But we won't go too much into that. But yeah, the school was great. I have to say, I probably could have studied a little harder.
Of
But
course.
my wife went there. I met my wife there, although we didn't date until years later, which is kind of weird. But I'm still tightly connected to everybody there. I support Notre Dame. I'm actually a fan of all the sports, not just the football team. I really like the current coach of the
Oh,
football
Freeman,
team.
man,
I hope he succeeds.
he better
Um,
get it together because
he better get it together. He's
he
a
better
lot of
get it
pressure,
together.
a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
pressure on that job, but he's a very likable guy. So yeah, I would say, you know what the big thing is the networking you make out of that, out
Yeah,
of
oh
going to
yeah,
Notre Dame, because when you meet somebody, it's kind of like, and I never went to the academy, West Point or any of that. But when you meet somebody from Notre Dame, particularly on LinkedIn, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. You're guaranteed to connect and at least have a conversation, and they will go out of their way typically, and I'll
hmm
go out of my way
yeah,
if somebody from Notre Dame wants to reach out. Kind of like with veterans as well. It's a similar bond. Veterans tend to bond with other veterans, right? I
yeah.
think the Notre Dame thing for me is very similar to that. You develop it's something you have in common. It was, the school was hard. It wasn't
Oh yeah,
easy. So you had to do the work, but you also, back when I was there, I think they were a little bit more lenient, about what we could do. And, they threatened us a lot, but they wouldn't kick anybody out unless you really did something. We were on the triple secret probation list about 12 times, but, you know, we made it
yeah.
through, and now we're all respectable members of society.
I love it, man. So you finished the ROTC program at
Yeah.
what I think is the best school on the planet. We'll leave that out of there. And you end up in West Germany like you wanted. And we've had one other guest on this show. I think it was Walt Morgan, who also served over in Germany when the wall was still up. And
Yes.
I always am fascinated by kind of what was that experience like? What was it like being, in this place where there's this just wall that went up overnight, and it's a stark contrast between West and East Germany, right? Like there's night and day difference, poverty and just run down and just awful on the east side, and the west side is flourishing
Yes.
and industry and all of that. And I believe Walt told a story about, having to go over into East Germany and like all the checkpoint stuff, and it's kind of scary. And like, did you have any experiences like that?
So I was not in combat. I was a support. I was logistics. So, but we were half an hour from the border of East Germany, which basically was the Soviet Union. I mean, because really, and so great stuff you just shared there. Um, I can tell you, there's a terrain feature called the Fulda Gap, which most people have no idea what I'm talking about. But so let me explain. The Fulda Gap is like a smooth valley between, mountainy and forest, right? It's like a bowling alley, and it was the invasion route that every invader since Genghis Khan, Napoleon, everybody and their brother, whoever, and Europe fights all the time, right? If you look at the history of Europe, there's always somebody fighting. That was the place where everybody moved their armies through because there was no mountains and trees and all that, right? You could go through. So picture we were right at the bowling alley, like we were right where the pins would be if Russia came through, right? All these the strategy think tanks are all, you've seen movies where they have guys standing around a map and they have sticks and they move, the units around the map, when they're in the middle of a war, right? So all these guys are strategizing that this is the 95% probability of where the Russians are going to attack if they attack, right? So we were all in a defensive mode. We were never going to threaten to attack them, but we were all trying to protect, the Western European nations, right? So we were the front lines, and it was a lot of animosity between us and Soviet Union. Okay, so and no one knew, everyone was stressed out. Now, luckily, no bullets were fired, but it was theorized that they're back then tanks were the big thing coming off of World War II, and they had about they outnumbered us at least 10-1 in tanks. And then there was tactical nuclear weapons that both sides had. Like once that
Right.
starts, you're pretty much screwed, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of stress, and we had these before the internet and before cell phones. There was landlines, and so this is a funny story. But you got to make light of it, because if you get if you think about how screwed you could be, it'll just you got to keep a light look on it. Um, we had these things called the alert rosters, and so there'd always be somebody in a headquarters of all the units all over the place. Somebody had to be awake, by the phone, and we all had to share that. And there's a roster, and there was like once a month we had to stay up for like 48 hours straight and man the phone over the weekend, in case something happened. There was a protocol for what everybody does. We weren't combat, so we weren't the cutting edge guys who were right in the front of the battle, but we still had to, get our weapons and all that if something happened. And so, how do you alert all the other guys? So we had this phone roster without this tree. You got to call these three guys, and those three guys got to call. And if somebody, it was very inefficient, because if somebody was not there, the guys below weren't. So our unit was extremely poor. I think the statute of limitations is passed. I don't think we would have made it if if they ever attacked, because we were a bunch of mechanics fixing stuff, right? And you have to be able to handle weapons and defend and stuff like that, as because you're in the Army, but you also have another job which we had to focus on. So often the duty of fixing stuff overrode the duty of the training to be a soldier in our unit, right? We had a lot of guys with oily uniforms, and they look like crap because they've been crawling underneath a truck, for months. And so anyway, but we made it. And I do want to share this. So we had what was called the caserne, which is the base, the Army base. We had multiple bases in our town, and the buildings we had were from World War II. And there was bullet holes still in the buildings. The glass. So we were a maintenance unit. We had to repair trucks and forklifts and big large vehicles, right? We were beyond just changing the brakes. We had to repair the engines. We had to, it was called heavy maintenance. It was, uh, way in the back lines. And we were in a building where they used to repair trains in World
Oh
War
shit.
II. And there was a track that went through this building. And you can imagine how big it was if a train had to go through, and they would repair it, right? And I don't think they had changed the light bulbs since World War II. And this building is like, the ceiling is about 30 feet off the ground. The lighting is piss poor. There's holes in the ceiling. There's no heat. The windows are all blown out from bullet holes. There's no, the windows are all shot. The brick buildings, you can see, huge pock marks where, there was a fight there. And, there's no heat. The conditions were just freaking horrible. It's very dark. And we had guys crawling under, laying literally on ice on the floor of this building, working in the
Turning wrenches.
undercarriage. Yeah, turning
Yeah.
wrenches, and then the railroad track going through the middle. So the conditions weren't that great. And the other thing that was a twist was, this was the first couple of years of the volunteer army. The draft had just ended,
Hmm.
and there was a fairly anti-military sentiment in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so the guys we were getting in the Army, so my first platoon, I had like 40 guys, 40 people. I say guys generically. Hopefully no one's going to get pissed off. But out of the 40 guys, about 10 of them came from a judge that said, you either join the Army or go to jail. I mean, the caliber was a little rough.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the quality that you see, since Reagan came in. This is before Reagan.
Right.
So here I am, a stupid 22-year-old, wet behind the ears kid trying to lead this platoon of. So it was
Misfits.
rough. It was rough. Yeah.
I hear you. So
But
you only
the Germany part was awesome. The travel was great. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I tried to get to Germany my whole career because it's like a jumping off point to see all of Europe. You just get a train pass on the
Exactly.
weekends. You're in France, it would have been awesome. Unfortunately, the Army had better plans for me, I guess,
Yeah.
because never made it over there. So you only did 5 years. And what was your decision to get out? Why did you only do the 5 years?
I have no regrets, but so my next assignment was Colorado Springs, which is very at least at the time, it was one of the top two destinations. The other one was Hawaii.
Hmm.
And and I got it. I got Colorado Springs, so I did a lot of skiing. Um, I guess um, I had had enough. I was put in some situations where the previous guy before me, like that job, I was battalion motor officer. Okay,
Hmm.
there's like 200 trucks, and all of them are older than the guys driving them. And all of them had been blown up at least 5 times, and they're on their 5th engine and their 12th transmission, and they were death traps. And
Right.
we had to keep them on the road, and it was dangerous for everybody involved, not the least of which was the drivers, but the whole community. Wherever we drove around, it was like, geez, and we're driving, in some cases, these huge 5,000-gallon tankers loaded with fuel and stuff. I'm like, oh my God. So it just it was before Reagan really started, before everything started building up. The conditions were less than optimal. I enjoyed the travel. I took the brunt of a lot of other people's mistakes, for a
Hmm.
time. And I just said, I'm not sure I want to keep doing this. And so I had big illusions about, working. And I kind of got tired of moving around a lot.
Yeah.
I've been moving around all my life. So I kind of wanted to settle down. And, I knew I didn't want to get married while I was in the Army, you know, and I figured I'd probably get married at some point. And I had a lot of opportunity, but I just saw the stress of married families in the Army. When one spouse is in the military and the other isn't, it's just
A
hard to
recipe for
keep.
disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was time for me to move on. I got no regrets. It was a great experience. Great guys. I had pretty good assignments, really, other than the actual job. The 2 jobs I had, the one in Germany and the one in Colorado Springs, were nobody wanted it. They had fired the previous 3 guys, and I had no training on. I don't even know how to change my own oil in my car. So here I am, you know.
A,
But
a
anyway,
battalion motor officer, and you don't
yeah,
know how to change your own oil. That sucks.
yeah.
So, what kind of challenges did you face when you transitioned out? Did you have that loss of identity, that loss of purpose that so many of us have when we get out? Because it's such a structured life. They tell you when to eat, sleep, breathe, basically.
Yeah. Um, I will say it's a big mindset shift.
Yeah.
And I thought I was prepared for, and I knew that, right? And so I studied it, all that. I will say it was a lot harder to get a job than I thought, even though I thought you got to be able to sell yourself and as the skills that you have accumulated and how that would help the person who's looking to hire you, and how they could benefit from your skill set. And you can't talk in army lingo and army acronyms. You've got to communicate in their language. So and it's a completely different universe. It's like so I ended up going into defense contractor, which was at least they were hiring ex-military officers to run the factory, right? So
Hmm.
that ended up to be a good fit for me. I was basically ready to take anything I could get. Okay. In terms of mentally, I didn't have too much uh, problem with that. I was optimistic. I thought I had done a lot of work to figure out what I needed to do, and I was pretty prepared. I mean, this you can't prepare for everything, but I think I had learned a lot from the combination of school and moving around a lot all my life, and so that part wasn't that hard for me. And I it was it, that was pretty seamless for me. The hard part was getting the job, and once I got the job,
It
then
was
yeah. And I always asked for. I wasn't afraid to ask for help.
Which is
Uh,
important because a
yeah,
lot of us are, raised in that environment. It's
yeah,
not okay to ask for help. You go get help, your career is over, kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned something that I think is ultra important when you're transitioning out, and that's learning how to communicate your military skills to the corporate setting. So,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
touched on that. You said it was a lot harder to get a job than you thought it was going to be, even with your network and kind of where you
Mm,
went to school and what you had done in the
mm.
army. So talk about how you translate those skills into the corporate setting to give yourself the best chance of finding a job even now.
So here's some gold here. I firmly believe that your network is your net worth. How about that?
Yeah.
So in life, starting when you are in school, start to build the Rolodex, which is just keep track of people you meet, right? And do good things for them, and do good things with them, and build, and don't be afraid to tap into those people later on. You know, um, what's the Zig Ziglar quote? The more you do for other people, the more you. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's
I do. Yeah. You can have everything you want if you just give enough other people what they want.
There you go. So help other people along the way. Help and keep track of them. It was hard for me because I kept moving, so I had a whole bunch of Rolodexes. But some core people I have, and don't be afraid to give them a call, and don't be too proud that and at least have a conversation. And some of them, none of them are going to help, but some of them will. And you it's hard to do. Helen Keller said, it's hard to do something on your own, but together you can get a lot accomplished. Helen
So
Keller was
true.
amazing, right? So tap into your the people you serve with, particularly keep track of the ones that left before you because they paved the path. You're not alone, man. A million people have done this already, right? It's not like you're. So don't reinvent the wheel. Tap into people who've already done this, and there's a million resources. So don't think you have to start from ground zero and learn this. There is a path to do it.
Yeah.
But really, I think, and this, I don't want to make this sound like a commodity, but your friends and your associates and the people you've met are assets.
Yeah.
Okay, think of it as an asset. that you can take advantage of, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You can help yourself, and on the flip side, always be willing to help other people when they come to you, and it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in networking, and that's probably my wheelhouse actually. And because as a kid I moved around so much, I was forced to meet a lot of people. It's premature in this conversation, but I can say that, I'm on LinkedIn. I got over 23,000 connections, and a lot of them are veterans, guys I work with, and alumni from Notre Dame, right? And I can reach out to any of those, and if they don't know the answer, they'll know somebody who does. So don't build your network continuously. Make it a habit. Every time you meet somebody, remember their name, put them in your phone. It'll pay off in the long run. And if you can help them do something, lead with value if you can. If you can try to offer to help them first, there's a rule of reciprocity, which I can never.
Reciprocity. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank God for you there. They're going to want to help you, and they're going to want to probably help you more than you help them. So it
That's
always
so
pays
true.
to lead with kindness.
Yeah. So did you lean pretty heavily on the network you had built to land that first job in the contracting space?
You bet your ass.
Yeah. I believe
The
it,
guy,
man, because when I got out, I didn't have a large network. I was pretty, I don't know what it was. Nobody really came forward to teach me about like what the power of a network can be. As an infantry guy during GWAT, like not a lot of networking opportunities, or at
True.
least kind of the way I saw it. Now, I mean, that's not really true, because if the way I approach networking now, like everything is a networking opportunity. If I'm at the gym talking to somebody, is a networking opportunity. Last week in Sam's Club buying groceries, networking opportunity, because I saw a guy wearing a t-shirt of something I'm interested in, right?
Perfect.
Like you can, like, when you open your mind to what networking actually is, everything becomes a networking opportunity, and it's so valuable. Like, I may never talk to that guy I saw in Sam's ever again, but I also have his phone number, and I know what he does for a living, and I know where he trains jiu-jitsu at, and I can leverage that at some point if I need to. You know
That's
what I mean?
awesome.
And so like, I'm not surprised you went to Notre Dame. It's very well known for churning out successful people, particularly in the business world. I mean, there's a reason the football team is as good as it is, even though the standards are as high as they are, because there's a lot of money pumped into that program from the alumni, because they're successful people who want to breed successful people. And so I'm not surprised that you tapped into your network to land your first corporate job. But how did you get out of your own way and really understand, like, it's time for me to leverage my network. I'm not having any luck on my own. Let me call somebody in my network.
That's just ingrained in me. I mean, I've been doing that since I was in high school, so I don't even, it wasn't like a conscious decision. It was just part of what
It
I
was just
do,
like
like breathing.
you just
It's
naturally
like
knew how to
breathing.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe I don't want to, yeah, I guess I just got lucky, but I've been doing that forever. My dad was a big social butterfly, and my
So it was
grandfather
very
was.
ingrained in your upbringing. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
latched onto it early. You saw it between the
Yeah.
moving around, and your dad was also
Yep.
a people person, if you
He
will, talking
was.
to people. That's great, man. So you move into the defense contracting space. Was your first job with Raytheon? And if everybody
First
who's
job
listening
was
to this,
Raytheon. Yeah. So
if you don't know who
if
Raytheon is, they're like the one, basically, that all GWAT stuff was Raytheon, L3, KBR, all that good stuff. So Raytheon's the big one. They got a headquarters here in Melbourne.
Wow. So I was working on the Patriot missile, which was brand new at the time, right? And you may have heard of the Patriot missile, but um, we were on the assembly line making missiles, and then I went into the finance of a factory. I majored in finance, so
So
I
you're a
really,
numbers guy.
I'm a numbers guy, but I really enjoyed the application of the numbers to manufacturing. I really enjoyed manufacturing. And I had not really learned a whole lot about it. It was just like, wow, I really appreciate the complexities of how everything has to come together to make this work. There's a lot of moving pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they pulled me off the floor to run the numbers, and then the Gulf War hit, the first Gulf War, and that's when they really used Patriot missiles in the field for the first time. And at the time, they were using them as anti-missile missiles. The Iraqis had these Scud missiles, and so the Patriot missiles were used as a defense thing It's designed as anti-aircraft, but they're using it for anti-missile, and they had to ramp up production like 10x all
And
of a
next,
sudden,
yeah,
right?
of course.
And so they pulled me off the friggin' computer and onto the assembly line again. And not to brag, but I will say, running the numbers for about a year, I became more cognizant of how we could be more efficient in the
In the
factory.
manufacturing
So
process.
we I had some guys move some stuff around, and okay, you guys were doing all 12 of these things, and this guy was only doing one. Why don't you do 9 and let this guy do 4, so we're not all bottlenecked with what you're doing, kind of like level the. I'm making this real simple, right? I'm not, but basically leveling. You're optimizing the manufacturing line, right? So that the between skill sets and time and everything like that. So we basically, I think we went like 3x production volume with some of the ideas I had. So um, at least the little piece that I had to do, which was there was a lot of pieces. So that was pretty cool.
So what you described there sounds a lot like what is today known as Lean Six Sigma.
Lean Six
Am I
Sigma, yep. Supply chain, logistics, all this stuff. Yeah, yeah,
basically eliminating waste, being more efficient? And that's what
that's
the
right.
whole principle behind Lean Six Sigma is. And it was explained to me. I have a green belt just to make myself competitive for a
Wow.
program I want to get in. But Lean Six Sigma, from my understanding, when I was in the course to get the green belt, is really geared more towards the manufacturing side of things, and then like agile, like project
Yes.
management, all of that is people side of things. So just for those of you who are listening who are more on the intrapreneur side of things, these are some things that will help you kind of climb that corporate ladder to the best of your ability and end up like Mr. Murray here doing some manufacturing stuff. I love that, man. What is an achievement or a moment in your corporate career that made you realize you were making an impact? Like, when did you really realize that?
Well, that Patriot missile thing where they pulled
Yeah.
me off the accounting department and into the Patriot missile line was a big deal. And I got recognized, and um, I mean, it was all hands on deck. We went to 3 shifts. Full everybody. Because there's a volume, there's throughput, right? You got to, and there's certain constraints you have, and so you got to optimize those. You got to like if you have a huge pipe that's 10 feet in diameter and you got all this water flowing through, but right in the middle there's only like a 2-inch a section where it's only 2-inch wide. The fact that this pipe is 10 feet in diameter on the other end isn't going to matter until you solve the problem of that where there's a small diameter. You got to get the flow consistent through the whole thing, right? So we kind of did, nothing's perfect, but we improved it a lot, right?
Right.
So and this is before the concept of the terminology of Six Sigma and all that wasn't around. It was just, I don't
No,
know if we had
that's new. I
th-
just wanted to
yeah,
make the
yeah.
comparison because really what you're talking about is kind of Lean Six Sigma principles
It
now.
is. It is now. Yeah, from what I know, you probably know more than I do about it. But yeah, it's just to me it was just like common sense. Let's just let's just that this guy's sitting around doing nothing, and these 12 guys are busting their ass.
Right. Let's
Let's
fix
even
that
that
problem.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
I
not
love
because
that.
he's screwing her off. He's just the work hasn't hit him yet. So
Right.
let's do that. So anyway, I think that was the big thing. And then this is not going to sound. And then the second thing that I would say, and this is probably not what you're looking for, but I like comedy, and I'm known to tell a few dad jokes now. Now they're known as dad jokes. They
I
weren't back
love dad
then.
jokes.
Yeah, I got an offer to work at a mirror factory recently. It's something I could see myself doing. Eh,
That's a good one.
I'm glad you got that one.
I
All right,
love
wait.
that one.
I got a look at this. I got a little
Yeah,
device there.
nice. You
So
really do love comedy.
yes, I do. So that became pretty well known, and so at Raytheon, they're huge supporters of the United Way. We're really getting off track here, but I think it's pretty cool anyway. And they want everybody to contribute to the United Way. It's a charitable thing, and it's a little bit extreme. They kind of strong arm you. They pick people to go out and solicit, and you sign up and you have it taken out of your paycheck right? And, I guess, I don't know if they get bonuses on participation levels or whatever, but they were pretty heavy into getting people to sign up. So I worked at one plant that was one of the smaller plants, and the head guy came up to me. He says, "Murray, we're having a United Way kickoff, next month. I want you to be in charge of the United Way kickoff, and I want you to do a show, and I want you to make it funny." And this is 1985 or 84. "I want you to model it after Saturday Night Live." Okay, which was sort of new back then, and it was funny back then. It sucks now, but it was really funny, and it was kind of a brand new thing where they have a series of little skits, right? So they put me in charge of this skit, and I had to write it and direct it and star in it, and I had to solicit other people that worked there to be, I had to get the guy who mops the floor to be an actor in this skit, I mean, which was great. We got everybody involved, people who didn't think they could do it. That was part of the thing I liked about it, was getting all these guys who had no idea. And I haven't had any training or anything like that. I just like to tell jokes. So anyway, I won't get into too much more detail, but there was one joke, have you heard about the new restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere. Anyway, I worked idiosyncrasies of our factory into these skits. There was a Batman skit we did. The first Batman movie with Jack Nicholson was just coming out. It was hyped all over the world, and we incorporated that. And we had how the Army likes acronyms. We had this BAT program. We were making these, missile device things called the BAT program, BAT. What a coincidence. And Batman was coming out, so I worked that into a skit. And I played the Joker. Bottom line is, we did this clandestinely after hours. We practiced, we wrote it. It wasn't just me. It was a team effort, and we had shitty costumes, but it was intentionally shitty. We didn't pay for anything. It was all thrift store stuff, and we had a shower curtain. And we had a guy that was a DJ that did sound, and it blew everybody away. It was just being on a stage and getting a laugh is incredible rush. And it was so good that we had to go do the whole thing in front of the corporate headquarters. And then we had to do something for the local news station. It got on the local news. We had to do like slimmed down versions. But as stupid as that sounds, the whole experience was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I had to kind of put that together, so I think it was, I guess you could say that was leadership, because there's a bunch of people who are working in a factory making missiles and converting it into an entertainment, comedy thing, and giving them the confidence that they could do it. It was, and then keeping it under wraps. So we had to have some kind of security clearances. But the guy who ran the factory was so blown away. He wanted to be in it. So we gave him a little part too, and he was pretty good. He's a natural. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic, but
no, that's great, man.
That was and because Raytheon is kind of staunchy conservative,
yeah, just
old
stick
school,
up your ass kind of deal. Right?
Exactly. It kind of really was the antithesis of the whole thing, which I enjoyed. I'm kind of that's me, I kind of like to rebel a little bit, so that angle was pretty cool. But the guy who ran that factory was also like that, so he had my back. It was great.
Yeah,
it was great.
So you've since shifted your focus away from corporate America to helping small business owners build business credit. What inspired this transition for you? Where did this idea come from, and kind of what led you to this path?
Man, you're asking good questions. So I knew I got an early retirement package about 4 years ago. So, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Let me tell you that being an entrepreneur is a massive, going from a corporate life to an entrepreneur is just like going from the Army to civilian life. I mean, it's a completely different ball game. And now everything is on you. You can't have a bad week,
Right.
So, and it's ups and downs. It's
exciting.
It's right. It's exciting. It's thrilling, but it's scary.
Yeah.
So I wanted to plug into something that was already there, instead of try to create some new business from scratch. Because I'm in my 60s, I don't have time. I don't have the, and I, anyway, mindset. Just like, and here's the mindset is 98% of everything. Whether you
Literally.
leave,
Yeah,
whether
it
you
really
leave the
is.
army or life in general. So that's a little bit off what you're asking. We'll talk about mindset later. But anyway, so I have come across opportunities that I'm going to call financial literacy, under the broad umbrella of financial literacy, um, for individuals or business owners. I have used my network. I'm on LinkedIn. I've gotten involved with a bunch of mastermind groups, meeting other people who are creative and entrepreneurs. There's a whole universe of people out there that are doing some amazing things. And so when I hear something, now keep in mind, I have a finance background with an MBA, which is Masters of Business uh, Administration, and I have a 35-year corporate financial executive background. Yet there's a lot of stuff about finance I don't know, and
Imagine
which is
that.
like, imagine that. And so when I hear something that I don't know that can solve a problem, I'm like, God, if I don't know that, I know a lot of other people don't know that, and let me learn more. And if it's a good fit, I want to tell as many people as possible. So I'm doing three things right now, three different programs, and the most recent one is this business credit. Somebody explained to me that the challenges that business owners go through. Ready to go right into that? Let's just go right into that.
Yeah,
Is that right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I didn't know any of this, right?
I
Because I
think
was
it's
a corp.
awesome, by the way, what you're doing, because financial literacy in America as a whole is fucking awful.
It's
It's
horrible.
terrible. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And I like how you frame that. You have a 35-year corporate career in executive finance, and there's still things that you don't know. So it's really easy for you to pick out, well, if I don't know this, I know nobody else knows this. So I think it's admirable, the shift that you've made, because this is a huge problem that needs to be fixed in the United States. Just not even at a business level, but at a personal level. Financial literacy is awful, and I speak from experience, having a bankruptcy when I was in my 20s, because I didn't know how money worked, and struggling to understand how credit worked because I had nobody to teach me how credit cards work, and learning about different investment vehicles that you can avoid paying taxes back to the government because they already tax us enough. And so I absolutely love all of the financial literacy stuff. It's super important to me, and so the floor is yours, my friend, to talk about this stuff as much as you need.
Wow. That's awesome. So just as it became, after a 35-year corporate career, we were only exposed to 401ks, right? And I kind of, it's not like they intentionally kept everything else, but they bake it into your paycheck, and that's always what you talk about and all that. And you kind of don't know there's anything else out there in terms of investing. And now that I left corporate world, I'm like, all this stuff is, like, oh my God, I wish I'd have known about real estate, and oh, I could have done so much better. Let me tell you, if anybody's watching this, if they think 401ks are the solution to everything, you're friggin' a million% wrong. You got to open your eyes. There's a million things better than 401ks. The guy who invented 401ks does not think that people should rely on them for investments, because that's not what it was intended to do. But that's another story. Just open your eyes, start looking at some other things. Anyway, that's the sidetrack. Um, so um, let's talk about business credit. So uh, I met another, and I'm always meeting people online in masterminds, and that looks interesting, and you have conversations with people. I'm trying to connect the dots, looking at their LinkedIn profile, saying, well, there's an angle, like how I met you. Well, this guy's a veteran, and he's messaging and communicating and benefiting. I got to talk to him. I got to talk to him. And speaking of networking, you built this whole awesome thing up from nothing. You were one
From
of the
literally
fastest
nothing.
networkers I've ever seen. So hats
Well,
off to you.
that's
Uh,
humbling, brother, because I've worked my ass off to do
you
this.
have, you have, and for a good cause. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
why it works, because you're doing things for other people, and in return, you get even more benefit, right? So it's authentic and it's real. And that's why you've succeeded. And that's why you've grown so fast, among other things. Plus, you're a hustler, which is good. So anyway, you got to hustle. You can't wait for stuff to happen. You
It's
got
a
to make
grind,
things
man.
happen.
Yeah,
You got to make it happen. If you're if
show
you're
up
a
every day.
if you're a corporate guy, there's a tendency to wait for it to happen. When you get out of that and you're working for yourself, you can't wait. You got to make it happen. So, um, I was exposed to this, and the guy who described it to me, he called it a blue ocean opportunity. And there's a concept of red ocean, blue ocean. Let me explain that real quick. So, a business that's red ocean, it's red because there's blood in the water. What does that mean? That means there's a million competitors. They're all fighting for the same scrap. There's no new ideas. It's all like, who can yell the loudest? Let me think. Like, I mean, it could be anything. Like I'm going to say like uh, soda, Coke. Drinks. There's a million competitors in that space. It's really hard, to crack into. If you're selling soft drinks or something, you got to come up with some unique thing. There's a million other things. That's the only thing I can think of is soda. A lot of things become a commodity. It's just a big fight, over. But blue ocean means there's no competition because no one's doing it because no one knows about it. So this was truly a blue ocean thing. Businesses. So every business. Here's the premise. Everybody needs money as a business, or everybody needs access to money so that they can get it when they need it. That's the important thing. They need money to be available when they need it. Whether you're an individual person selling crap online or whether you're Walmart or anything in between, you always need more money than what you happen to have in the account right now because you want to grow, you have an opportunity, you want to buy somebody, you need to go buy a truck, you need to go buy a computer, you need to buy marketing help, you need to hire an accountant, whatever. You need to be able to do stuff because when there's something, a situation comes up, and if you don't have the money to address it,
It'll kill your business.
it'll kill your business. So you got to be ready. Everybody needs money. The money is available, but most small business owners don't know how to get to it, and that's because the rules on business credit are just whacked. Okay, so the guy who the well, where do I start? Let's start with the difference between business credit and personal credit. Let's start with that. Okay. Because I think you need to understand the difference. If you're a business owner, you need to listen to this. Take a couple notes here. All right. There's a massive difference between personal credit, which is going to be this hand, and business credit, which is over here. And it doesn't make sense to me why there is a difference. But if you don't know, you don't know, and you're never going to get to where you need to go. A lot of business owners I talk to don't know there's business credit scores. If you're any business owners watching this, what is your business credit score? Do you know what it is? And I'll give $10 to anybody who knows what their business credit score is, because I'm going to bet not only do you not know your score, but you might not even know such a thing exists, right? And let me tell you, it's public information. So somebody else knows your business credit score, even if you don't. So think about that. That can be used against you or for you or with you. It's just something you need to have in place. So let's go. So personal credit, people understand a lot about personal credit because we live it all the time. It starts when you're 18 years old. Everything you do financially is tracked, tied to your social security number, and sent to one of the three consumer credit bureaus, which are TransUnion, Equifax, and
Equifax
Experian,
and Experian.
right?
Yeah.
And from there, and all those transactions get sent up automatically. You don't have a say. It just happens. It's required by law. It just happens automatically. You don't have a choice. You don't have to do anything. It just happens. And from that, they have an algorithm that calculates a FICO score. And the FICO score is intended to be a financial estimation of your ability to pay if you want to borrow something, right? And of course, the higher the better. And the range is somewhere between 500 and 800. And if you get a 730 or above, that's considered a sweet spot. If you and the banks want to talk to you and you'll get better terms and blah, blah, blah. Your credit score is a direct impact on the quality and the ability to access money, okay, as a personal entity. So that's personal credit. Business credit has different credit bureaus, okay? The big one is
Duns and Bradstreet.
Dun and Bradstreet. Wow. God, well,
You're
age is a
welcome.
terrible thing to waste. Thank you. Yes. And then there's Experian Business and Equifax Business, which are not the same. They're probably the same corporation, but they're a different arm. The scoring is different. It's 0 to 100. Now, those two things aren't a big deal. Just different, but that's not a big deal. Here's the big deal. It's not automatic. It's
Nope.
not required by law. And in order to build business credit, here's the zinger. You have to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know how to do it because it doesn't happen automatically. You can't sit back and expect your business credit to be great, even if you are paying everything on time, even if you think you're paying everything on time. It doesn't happen automatically. Why is that? Well, there's no law requiring it to, number one. It costs businesses money and time, and since there's no law to do it, most of them would rather not do it. Listen to this. Over 90% of the business transactions never get sent to the credit bureaus in the business side. What does that mean? That means you just paid off a business credit card, but no one knows.
You got nothing to show for it.
Nothing to show for it, right? You don't get
Yeah.
recognized for it. So you're not going to improve your business credit because it never made it. And you know what? You don't know it didn't make it because they don't tell you because they don't know. The people you're talking to, when you call customer support, they don't have any clue what you're talking about. So it just doesn't happen. And if you can't navigate through that, it's really hard to build business credit on your own. And I didn't know any of this, by the way. I'm not trying to sound like I know it all because it's 2 years ago I didn't know any of this. So that's why I'm telling as many people as I can. The other big thing that's different about business credit is in personal credit, the more you borrow, at some point you're going to hit a ceiling and your score is going to be negatively affected and it's going to start going down. And there's ratios and stuff, debt to income ratio, stuff like that. You just can't borrow indefinitely, right? At some point, it's going to hurt you. And so you're either going to get a lousy credit score which is going to equate to crappy interest rates, crappy terms, or worst case, you get rejected altogether. So there is a limit on the personal side. In business credit, the underwriting
they want you to borrow more money.
They want you to borrow more money. As long as you have a demonstrated ability to pay,
right?
They want to give you more credit.
Yeah.
And so that implies, though, the one little catchword there is demonstrated. So if you are paying a lot and it's not demonstrated because it isn't recognized, it isn't doing any good. You've got to make sure everything is connected and that they're showing that you did pay those bills. And as long as you do that, which is a lot harder than it sounds, they're gonna increase how much they want to give you. So it's a whole different ball game.
I'm so glad my mentor, when I started my LLC, told me to go get a Duns and Bradstreet number. This is the first thing that I was told to do because it helps with your credit, right?
It does.
Without it, you're not going to be recognized as a credible business.
And listen to what you just said, though. That's right. That's correct. But you had to intentionally get it.
I did. I had to go to their website. I had to fumble fuck my way through figuring out how to fill out.
It's a really shitty website.
It didn't cost me anything, I don't think, at the time. But I don't use all of Duns and Bradstreet's features, to be honest. I think the last time I logged into that was when I actually signed up to get a number.
Do not. Yeah, they have a little bit of a scam, which I want to share with everybody. But you just said the difference. You had to intentionally, whereas on the personal side, it happens. I don't have to sign up to TransUnion.
Yeah, well, on the personal side, it's even easier than that. If you're a parent and you're listening to this, open a credit card in your kid's name right now, because you can build credit for them while they're growing up and turn over to them that credit card or whatever when they're 18, and now they actually have a credit score instead of starting with no credit at 18 years old.
That's huge. As long as you pay pay it. I
Yeah,
mean,
pay the damn
yeah,
bills,
yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Like pay the fucking bills.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you can absolutely
That's a
like
good
take this
idea.
as a lesson. I have
Yeah,
buddies, I have pilot buddies that are doing this for their kids. Their kids are,
that's a great
5
idea.
and 6 years old,
Oh,
and they bought a bunch of property in Oregon. They're selling eggs because they have chickens, and so now
oh,
obviously there's
cool.
some tax benefits to employing your children, but opening that credit card to support the little farm that they're doing with the egg selling is going to build his kids credit, so when they're
Mm,
18 they'll have a perfect fucking credit score.
wow, that's beautiful. That's genius. Yeah, I hope everybody took note of that. That's really good advice. That's good parenting. Yeah. So anyway, so with business credit, you have to be intentional. There's the lesson right there. And if you're not intentional, you'll never get there. And there's a lot of benefits to having good business credit besides just being able to access money. But before we get into that, let's talk about. I'm going to. I think the next thing which would help people listening to this is just briefly explain a little bit about how you get good business, how you
Let's
do it.
do it. Yeah,
All
how
right.
do you do it? Because
And
we're
I'm
about how here. We don't hide anything,
yeah,
we
yeah,
inform.
yep. So I mean, we have 7 steps. I'm going to explain our 7 steps, and you can do this as some of this you can do on your own. You could. It's not easy. So the first step is you have to build a foundation, just like if you're building a house. And the foundation is you got to get the data associated with your business. We call it the fundability. We got to make you look, smell, feel, and taste like Walmart to the Business Credit Bureau. So you look impeccable, right? You got to look really credible. You want to put the odds in your favor that you're going to get approved, right? So what do I mean by the numbers, the data? Well, the most obvious example, which I think every client we've ever had has had some issue with this basic thing, is your business address. All right. So what does that mean? You can't, in the eyes of business credit, you can't have a PO box. Okay. They really don't want you to have your home address. They really want a legitimate, if possible, brick and mortar address. An alternative would be a virtual address.
That's what
They
I
have
do.
these services you can do. There you go. But you have to look credible. If you have a PO box, it doesn't look credible. And there's a lot of concern with fraud. A lot of the thinking behind the scenes on business credit is associated with fraud. If there's any whiff that you don't look credible, they're just going to reject everything, and not. It's easier to reject first and ask questions later. But they don't ask questions. They'd rather not. You know. So you got to look good. So your business address. The other thing is it has to be one address, and it has to be everywhere that you have a presence, and it has to be the same consistent address everywhere, to the decimal, to the period and the comma and the street. Like it's got to be ST period or S or street spelled out, but not both. So what do I mean by all this? So we had a guy who was a plumber. And this isn't the fault of anybody, because no, you don't know this. They don't tell you this. They don't give you a book when you become a plumber and say, hey, great job on being a plumber. Here's a book on how to be an entrepreneur with all the rules and stuff. They don't, no one. You just have to, how to be a plumber, but you don't know how to run. You don't know credit. You don't know marketing. You don't know accounting. You got to figure all that out on your own. So um, we had this plumber. He was 15 years in the business. He had 18 million in revenue. I mean, this guy was a good plumber. I mean, pretty big in terms of plumbing. So he had a big team, but he couldn't get any business credit, and everything he was doing was personal guaranteeing, right? Which I've kind of overlooked that whole thing. If you build business credit, you're building against the. This is a major part of our whole thing. I got to reel it back here. When you're building business credit, you're building it against the EIN of the business, and not the
Your
social
social security
security
number.
number of the owner. And that is a huge deal. I want to hammer this home. When you created a business entity, in most cases of people who are listening to this, and me, and probably you, it's an LLC, but any corporate structure, you have an EIN. And one of the reasons you create a corporate structure is to keep the liability isolated
On the
to the
business.
company, on the
Yep.
business,
Not on
not
you.
on the personal. That's
So
the whole
when
reason you
someone
set it up.
Yeah, when somebody comes after you, you don't lose your house. Your business just is responsible for whatever. And if your business ain't got shit, they can't get shit.
If you know nothing else after this call, if you forget everything, that one, get a legitimate business entity set up if you're going to start your own business. If you haven't done so already, that is a huge thing. And I'm not an advisor in that area, but a lot of times LLC is a good start. But the whole idea is, you don't want to lose your house because of a bad business decision. You want to keep everything separate. I mean, this is accounting 101. You don't want to commingle business money with personal money. You got to keep two separate books, right? So the problem is, one of the problems with business credit is that if you're trying to get a business loan, banks, well, I'm going to call it lenders. Let's just say lenders most often want a personal guarantee that you're going to pay back the loan. And they're going to make you sign your social security number on that loan. If you do, you're penetrating the corporate veil of protection that entity was designed to do. Because now when your social security number is on there, they can go after your personal stuff. So the goal is to get rid of that personal guarantee. And you can do that, or at least you can minimize. You might not ever be able to get rid of all personal guarantees, but you can get rid of most of them by building good credit against your EIN number, and do all your lending and borrowing and paying and everything against the EIN, and keep your personal stuff out of it. The last thing you need to do is stress, possibly lose your home because of something that happened in the business, or because something like COVID happened, which is totally out of your control. Who knew that was going to happen, right? And then a lot of businesses went under, and some people were personally guaranteeing their home. They lost not only their business but their home. I mean, what a disaster! So you want to try to prevent that, even though banks are going to insist that you got to go to a different bank. So we'll come back to that. But remind me if I don't hammer home personal guarantees. That's a big deal here. So let's get back to that plumber. 18 million in revenue, couldn't get business credit. So we pulled his credit report, and he had 9 different addresses. And he looked at it. Oh, and he looked at it, oh yeah, that's my cousin's warehouse that we. Oh yeah, that's our old address from back in '93. Oh yeah, we bought these guys. But no one told him he had to clean all that up. But when they're looking for his credit, they don't know which one of them is him, and they just reject it because it doesn't look credible. It looks like he's trying to evade the law or something, right? So you gotta consolidate. And by the way, it's not his fault. No one told him this. I wouldn't have known that either. No one tells you to do this. There's no like ramifications if you don't clean up your old addresses. But the bottom line is, you got to have one good address. You got to look and smell, feel, and taste like Walmart to the credit bureaus. And where do you have to have that address? Well, on your website, where you registered with the Secretary of State. Everybody has to register with the Secretary of State. Your bank account, your invoicing, everything has got to be the same, so that when someone's doing searches on you, they don't find a million different addresses, and everything looks consistent.
And a little lesson here, if you're going for brand consistency, this should resonate with you, because it should be the same for your brand, right? Address is the same everywhere, every platform, everything the same. So same rules apply to business finance, just so you know.
And along those lines, speaking of branding, if you're into SEO, which is search engine optimization, if you want to be found on Google, that's what SEO does. It's basically the same concept. You got to look the same everywhere, because if you have all different addresses, it's never going to register with Google. They call it indexing. You're not going to get indexed by Google, and you're not going to show up anywhere because they don't know which guy is really you, right? So it just makes good business sense to do that. So address is the obvious thing, but you also have to have a business phone number. You don't want it your personal phone number. You got to register with online 411, your business. What the hell is that? Well, no one uses it, but it counts for your business credit. It makes you look more credible. So you got to register for that. It's free. You got to make sure your email address is something that's has a good reputation. In other words, not a Gmail address, not Yahoo. It's got to be something associated with your business. because it doesn't look credible if it's joesbusiness@gmail.com.
It
I
needs to
mean,
be, yeah, it needs to be yourbusiness.com.
yourbusiness.com. So, because it's all a credibility thing, right? So step one in all this, there's 125 different things that you got to be credible. What I just said is like 90% of the meat, though. If you can get that stuff straight, you've got. I've said this before. You got to look, smell, feel, and taste like Walmart, right? You got to look like you're legit.
I want to interject for a minute because this is actually important if you want to get into like being able to bid on government contracts. When you sign up for sam.gov and then you go to the SBA to get your SDVOB status, all of this stuff has to be consistent as well. I ran into this same problem. Sam.gov fucked me over. They didn't put my LLC in there correctly, so it set me back in the whole process. I got to all the way to the end of the process with the SBA, and now I have to start completely over because it wasn't right in sam.gov. They put a space where there wasn't supposed to be a space. And it's like, well, that's on you. And I'm like, no, it's actually on you because I know I typed it in right. And I've never, ever had a space there where you say there's a space. And so it's just a mess. So I really encourage people listening to this. This shit's important. Like, it's not just for business finance. It's for anything that you want to get into. Having this consistency and really paying attention to this shit is really what's going to set you up for success.
Wow. Well said. Well said. I need to come work for you. I think. I think you'd be.
I can't afford you, brother. You're gonna have to run me through your process and get me a loan real quick so I can afford you.
So, along those lines, you brought up another good point. The one thing that business credit is like personal credit is they don't give a shit if the data is right. The onus is on you to get your information right. So you could be getting screwed over because of a space. Like that's a pretty extreme case, but yeah, something stupid like that could prevent you from, making a huge, it's just unbelievable. So they do have an obligation to fix stuff if you bring it to their attention, but the onus is going to be on you to constantly review your business credit score and your credit report to make sure everything is accurate, because we find a lot of mistakes. Just like personal credit, they don't care if it's right. They would, in fact, in the personal side, they would rather it be wrong so they can charge you a higher interest rate because you look more risky. Yeah, which is friggin' criminal. I'm telling you, the odds are stacked against us. So you got to be able to stick it to the man. I love that line from School of Rock, which I used to play that movie with my kids. As a parent, you always want to show kids movies that you like, So screw Teletubbies. I don't know if that's probably dating myself, but School of Rock, I thought, when they're teaching kids about AC/DC, I thought this is a movie I need to show my kids.
My favorite line in that movie is he's like, turn it sideways and cello, you've got a bass.
Yeah. I mean, Jack Black, that's probably his best work. I mean, that movie was written for Jack Black. I'm not a huge fan of some of his other stuff, but he was brilliant there. Anyway, but I digress. So you got to get the data right. There's 125 data points. If you focus on the few that I just brought up, it's going to get you 80 to 90% there, right? But you got to do it, and it's not. You got to look wherever you exist in the metaverse and make sure the ether, right? Because somebody could be misrepresenting you, right? Anyway.
And by the way, these are just good business practices in general, right? You should be reviewing your business credit just like you review your finance statements every month or whatever, right? Like, pay attention to this shit and set yourself up for success.
It's something you don't think about, right? But it's one of those things where if one little thing could screw up the whole ball of wax. So, and to the point that you brought up earlier, we recommend not just Dun & Bradstreet, but two other ones, Experian Business and Equifax. You should be represented at all three because you don't know where they're going to pull the business credit score from.
Right.
Here's a quick story. So this guy was not a client, but he had a story. The guy was obviously pretty well off. He bought a plane for his business with his credit card. And he must have been doing something because he got it approved. I don't know how much planes go for, but it's a little bit out of my price range. Millions. So he got a plane. And then a few weeks later, he wanted to buy a pickup truck for his business, which you would think would be a lot, although they're not cheap, would be a lot cheaper than a plane. And he got rejected. And he's like, yo, I just bought a plane with this credit card. And now you're saying, well, so here's a warning about Dun & Bradstreet. We believe Dun & Bradstreet has this program that's it's above and beyond just building legitimate business credit. That's what we do. You need Dun & Bradstreet because they are the 500-pound gorilla in the industry. You need to have a good credit score with them. However, they have this bogus program, and I don't know what they call it. I think it's called Business Credit Builder. You want to avoid that at all costs, okay? You would rather have a colonoscopy than work with these guys. 'Cause here's the thing. I call it pay to play. You pay them some exorbitant amount every month. And I don't know what the scale is, but I think it's probably based on your revenue because it's not cheap. And as long as you pay them, they give you an artificial high score, which totally is a massive conflict of interest. And then if you stop paying them, it goes back down. And if you show any interest in this, they will market you. They will follow you to church. They will follow you to the men's room. They will follow you, to your, baptism, whatever. They will not get off your case. You don't want to come near that. Dun & Bradstreet, I think they got sued by the SEC. I don't care if this is being recorded. That sucks. It's totally criminal that they have this, that even thought about doing this. So that's not what you want. You want to build legitimate credit through Dun & Bradstreet with a credit score. It's called the Paydex score. Legitimately, so that you do look good with Dun & Bradstreet, but you don't want to do this artificial pay to play. And that's not what we do. We do legitimate building business credit. So I recommend you look good for all three for the reasons I just told you about the guy with the plane. I'm not sure how many people on this call are going to be buying their own plane, but the concept is still the same, right?
Oh, I'm gonna buy my own plane someday. So
there you go. In case you need to know that, there's a hot tip. There's a hot tip for you.
I'm buying that damn Cirrus Vision jet as soon as I can afford it. It's happening.
I like a guy with vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next step is you got to register with the 3 credit bureaus, like we just said, right? And but you don't want to do that until you get all your own house in order. So then when you do register, the data is the same, right? Whenever you hand off data, like when you do a bank transfer or whatever, everything's got to line up, right? On both sides of the transaction. So that's basically what you're doing. Until you get your own stuff cleaned up, it doesn't make any sense to start building credit because the information, who knows what's going to happen, right? So step 2, we recommend you register for those 3. And so then you want to try it out to see if you got everything hooked up right. So what we do, I'm not trying to sell you this. I'm just telling you what we do just to give you an idea, right? So you need to go buy stuff that you're already buying from a vendor or lender that does report. Remember, over 90% of them don't. So it's kind of hard to find, but I can give you some tips. And then you want to go buy something and pay it off early. In business credit, if you pay it off early, it gives you a little more juice. And then you got to see, a month later, did that transaction hit the business credit bureaus? You're kind of like beta testing that you have everything set up right. So an example of an account that we give our clients, just in case you can't think of what to do, something like Uline. Uline sells basically everything.
Everything.
So we don't want you to buy stuff just to build credit. We want you to buy stuff you're already buying. Now, here's the thing about Uline. There's multiple ways to get involved with Uline. You got to get a net 30 account with them because not all of them are net 30 accounts. And you got to make sure they report that one, because there's other Uline accounts that don't report. So you're kind of like spinning your wheels. So you got to make sure they report. And then you got to find out which of the 3, off the top of my head, I don't know which. You got to find out which of the 3 they report to, because you've got to get representation for all 3 of those credit bureaus. Because when somebody reports, it doesn't mean they tell all 3. Some of them only report to 1. Some of them report to all 3. Another example is if you have a business that uses vehicles, gas cards are some gas cards. You got to find them that do report. And
is this stuff easy to find out with a quick Google search? Just Google search.
It is not.
It's not. Of course it's not.
Why
would it be?
Why would it be? To me, this is going to sound like a marketing pitch. I honestly don't know how you'd find it out. All right. If you call somebody at customer service, they're not going to know. The odds are they're not going to know what you're talking about because you're not talking to somebody who
Who
deals like
understands?
that.
Yeah.
There probably is some place that will tell you. We partner with guys that do report because that's part of the deal.
Yep.
Uh, so I mean, I think you could get your data right. You could register on your own, but it's finding vendors and lenders that do report, which is a major challenge. I wish I had better advice for you on how to do that. And I'm not just saying that to get your business. It's just hard to do. I mean, this is a concept I didn't even know about 2 years ago. So,
Right.
I mean, there's got to be somebody somewhere that, and sometimes you can get them to report if they aren't reporting, but I wouldn't bank on it,
Hmm.
particularly if it's a big bank. The
Right.
bigger banks are pretty much a lost cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only banks that do report are typically smaller regional banks. But anyway, getting back to the process, you got to find we call them starter accounts, tier one credit. You got to build that credibility. It's like you got to go to elementary school before you go to junior high. So get some small accounts, buy $50 worth of stuff and pay it off. Track it, make sure it hits the credit bureaus. Then once you know it works, then you just start getting more credit, right? And now you can get credit with vendors that have a prerequisite. Oh, you needed something like Uline before we'll even talk to you. Oh, you got something in place. Okay, now you can apply for this, right? Even Home Depot, I don't think you can get a Home Depot true business card until you've got something else in place. I think they have some criteria because we have that as a second tier. Even though
Okay.
you would think Home Depot. So here's a warning on credit cards. The odds are stacked against you. Here's a tip. If it says business credit card on the credit card, doesn't mean it's a business credit card. What are you talking about, Murray? What are you, an idiot? So look, here's my definition of a true business credit card. And this is me. It's got to be tied to your EIN, right? We've already talked about the importance of keeping everything contained with the EIN. So it's got to have your EIN connected to it, and it's got to report. And if it doesn't do that, it's a glorified personal credit card. If they
Damn.
ask for your social security number when you sign the application, odds are, I mean, you can follow up, but odds are it's not.
What if it asks
If
for both?
it asks for both, you have a chance. The Chase Business Inc. card, you might have a chance. I believe they do report,
I think
but
Capital One does too, because that's what I have. I have a Capital One Spark business card, and it's tied to the IN for sure. I know that for a
okay, all
fact.
right.
But I'm not. I can't guarantee that they report because I
Yeah.
thought that, like most people, probably, hey, it's a credit card. They should be reporting. Well,
Here's the thing: you can't assume that. Unfortunately, you would
nope.
think
Unfortunately,
you would think that that's the case, but I'm here to tell you for your own, you know, just just be aware that they don't all report. I believe Chase Inc. does. Um, I think City AA has one,
yeah.
but American Express, most of them don't.
Hmm.
Now, American Express has a corporate card, so they don't help you get to a score of 80, which is the sweet spot on a 0 to 100 business range. 80 is like a 730 on a personal. They don't help you get to 80, but once you get there, hey, welcome to the club. Here's the
Yeah. Here,
corporate
here
card.
come the
It does
marketing.
report. Yeah. So anyway, you just keep you're just going to make sure that what you're doing does report, which is I wish I had better.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be elusive just to try to sell you stuff. It's to me, if it was me, I would pull my hair out. It's tough to do. So, but if it's not reporting, you're not getting anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, and then as you build up, when you get to a score of 80, business credit reports there's like two elements. There's the score, and then they actually show your recommended amount is 20 grand, right? It actually is a number that they recommend that you're eligible for. So you want to get to 100 grand, or depending on what size of your business is, right? Sometimes 20 grand isn't going to move the needle for a big company, right? So and you can build everything stacks as you get a demonstrated ability to pay, which is the rule we talked about. demonstrate ability to pay, it starts building up. And that's what you want to do. You want to get a high credit score with a high credit number. Does that make sense? I mean, I wish I
Nice.
had
Absolutely.
better instructions to help you get started, but at least you can get started. If you get your data straight, like we
That's
talked
half
about
the battle.
in length, that's half the battle. And some stuff is going to report, and you got to keep track of your credit reports. And although they won't list the company that reported, they have categories like banking charges, internet charges. You might be able to figure out which reported based on what you just did, and then you can kind of leverage that and keep going to that well, right? So there's ways to do it, but it's kind of a little bit of a time suck. You got to know where to look and all that kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Murray, this has been phenomenal information. Thank you for putting this out there and sharing this insight with us in this financial literacy for businesses, because it's so important. I even learned some things that now I need to go back as soon as we get off this call and check out myself to make sure that I tighten up my ship. So anybody who's interested in your service, tell them where they can find you, how they can connect with you. You mentioned LinkedIn earlier. I'm sure you have a website. Let's let them know how to get in touch with you and reach out if they kind of want to have you hold their hand through this process.
Awesome. Before I do that, though, I'm going to tell you a couple quick things. We still got 2 more minutes, right? So besides being able to get money, here's a couple other reasons why it's important to have good business credit. And some of these are going to blow your mind. So number one, it can lower your insurance premiums if you're a business, depending on the business you're in, because they look for financial stability. I'm partnered with some insurance guys who want to bring business credit to their clients so they can lower their clients' insurance premiums, and they're going to make them look like a hero to their
This is also
clients, right?
true for your personal insurance, by the way. The higher your
That's
credit
right.
score, the lower your premiums.
That's right. So that's number one. Number two, at some point, you're going to sell your business, or let's call it transition. You're going to give it to somebody, right? There's a way to transition your business and keep the EIN with it. In other words, you sell your business and the EIN. Most people don't. Most people just sell the business, and whoever's buying it has to start their own new EIN number. But there's a way to do it to keep the EIN. What if you built a really good-looking profile against your EIN that qualified that business for a lot of money? Do you think that's going to
You
make the
just
business?
5x your money on the business.
There you go. That's going to make your business much more valuable to the buyer, right? Because they have a runway now that you had to build, and they're going to be able to leverage that. And here's a creative strategy. You can use it strategically. Business credit. What do I mean? So this is public information. So if you have subcontractors or vendors or whatever, you can pull their credit score to see if you're down to deciding between a couple of vendors, right? And they both seem okay. Pull the credit score, and that'll give you another data point to see if they're credible or not, right? All things being equal, you'd probably go with the guy with the higher score, because most businesses have no clue here, right? So if somebody has a clue, I don't know, just another data point. But here's a cool way that one of our clients used. So this guy was a government contractor, small, and he was bidding on a job against the 500-pound gorilla of that space.
And he had a credit score, so he won the contract.
He had a credit score, and the competitor didn't. Had a
Boom.
lousy score. So he pulled it, though. He pulled the client wouldn't have thought about this, I don't think. This guy forced it on the client. He said he pulled the competitor's credit score, and he slid it. He slid them both in front of the client and said, "Who would you rather work with, a guy who pays their bills or a guy who doesn't?" I mean, he kind of, he kind of sold that, right? But hey, it's true. I mean, you got to look good. You only have one chance to make a good first impression.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is sales psychology at work.
There you go, right there. So anyway, there's a lot of you just want to look good. Always. There's so many benefits of looking good on paper, because this is a provable metric. This isn't somebody's opinion, right? So you're going to look much more credible to somebody who wants to work with you, somebody who wants to partner with you, somebody who wants to hire you, and then not let alone access to money, which is really the main reason. And don't forget, eliminating personal guarantees, which is probably the biggest reason of all. You don't want to put your house on the line for something that happens in your business. because there's so many risks in the business, and then you got to contend with risks that are outside the business's control that are too numerous to mention here. With all the things, if you just watch the news for 5 minutes, any number of 50 things could blow up here any second, and you don't want to lose your house, right? So anyway, so to get a hold of me, our website is trebuchetsolutions.com, which is a mouthful. Trebuchet is a French word for catapult, which wasn't my idea of the name, but I like it. Trebuchet. Trebuchet Solutions, all one word. But the best place to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn, and I'm hoping that you're going to give us some notes here, because the spelling of my last name is a little brutal. It's Murray, Murray, and the last name is BE, Bravo, Echo, Alpha Uniform, Lima, India, Echo Uniform. Okay, it's French, it's brutal, but there's only one Murray Beaulieu on all of LinkedIn. And if you connect with me, mention this show. What a great show, what a great opportunity, what a great service you're doing for everybody. It's unbelievable. And I'll share my network of 23,000 with you, and I'll give you LinkedIn tips. If you need any help with LinkedIn, I think it's, depending on what you do for a business, it's a great place to either find clients or find partners. Like I work with a bunch of real estate guys. If you're a real estate person on LinkedIn, people aren't on LinkedIn to look for houses, I don't think, right? Generally. But it's a great place to find partners. If you're in real estate, for example, just keep your antenna up. You want to work with mortgage guys. You want to work with title guys. There's a whole bunch of ancillary people that you do as part of your normal business. Those people are on LinkedIn too. So that's who you can partner with. And here's $50,000 of advice in 10 seconds. If you're going to do business on LinkedIn, make your profile look like a sales page, not a resume.
That's it.
You want to tell people who you help and how you help them. And you don't want to talk about what you did in high school, what you did in college, blah, blah. No one cares about that. They want to know who you help and how you help them. And you want to talk on your profile like you're talking to them. And the more you can narrow it down to the exact type of person that you're trying to help, the more they're going to think that you're talking to them. And it's counterintuitive, narrowing down who you're talking to, but it actually is much more effective to niche. We call it niche down. Speak to the niche of the person that you're trying to work with.
That's it. That's right. That's it. Your LinkedIn is not a resume; it's a landing page. When you can remember that and dial it in, I promise you, we'll wait to see what happens. It's the greatest networking platform there is out there. I promise you that. And Murray hit it on the head with all the ancillary things. It's for everybody in any type of business, because every business needs something, a pool of people to pull from that can help you move that business along. And that's where you're going to find it, is on LinkedIn. It's where I found guys on my team. It's where I will draw for more guys when I need to bring more people onto the team to do more things. So Murray, brother, I appreciate all the great information. I thank you for your time today and being here. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to download this, rate, review, subscribe, get this in front of as many veterans as you can so we can keep saving lives. Until next week, we'll see you later. Take care. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.